Man is not what he thinks he is what he hides. Andre Malraux. Why do we fight? Why do we, time and time again, plunge ourselves into chaos and bloodshed, as if war is woven into our DNA? Nations rise and fall, not from natural disasters, but from the wars they wage. Families are torn apart. Entire generations are shaped by conflict. And yet, we keep fighting. Why? The answer is not just historical or political. It is deeply psychological, rooted in our most primal instincts. It is not simply that humans have to fight. It is that something inside us, something ancient and misunderstood, compels us to do so. This is not just the story of war in history books. This is the story of war in the human soul. Since the dawn of time, war has been a part of our existence. Long before civilization, kings or empires, conflict existed. For early humans, war was not a choice. It was survival. Anthropologists suggest that our ancestors evolved in a dangerous, competitive environment where tribes had to fight to protect their resources, their people, and their territory. The human brain, particularly the amygdala, was designed to respond rapidly to threats. Fear was not a flaw. It was a survival mechanism. To hesitate was to die. And over thousands of years, this instinct etched itself into the very fabric of our being. But war offered more than survival. It offered identity. When you fought for your tribe, you belonged. You weren't just an individual. You were part of a greater us, standing against them. In this binary division, humans found meaning. You were no longer just a hunter or gatherer. You were a protector, a warrior, a symbol of strength. This tribal psychology, this in-group versus out-group mentality, created a deep emotional bond within the group and a deep suspicion, even hatred, for outsiders. This is one of the most powerful psychological forces in human behavior, and it is still with us today. In nationalism, in politics, in religion, in sports, and yes, in war. As philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." War, for many, provides that why. It gives direction. It creates heroes. It builds myths. It gives a man or woman a purpose larger than life, and sometimes even larger than death. The battlefield becomes the arena for personal transformation, not unlike a spiritual pilgrimage. This is why the psychology of war cannot be reduced to hatred or greed. It is often about something deeper, the search for meaning. But to understand war fully, we must confront the human ego. Carl Jung described the ego as the center of our conscious identity, the part of us that says, I. But the ego cannot exist without contrast. To say, I am good, implies that someone else is not. This division, this psychological separation between self and other, becomes the foundation of conflict. When a nation sees itself as righteous, it often sees its enemies as evil. War becomes a moral battle. But this is more than propaganda. It's psychology. Jung also warned of the shadow, the unconscious part of ourselves that contains everything we deny or reject. In war, we often project our shadow onto others. The cruelty, fear, and rage we cannot face within ourselves, we see in our enemies. We dehumanize them. We call them savages, monsters, terrorists. We strip away their humanity so we can justify our violence. But in doing so, we lose a piece of our own. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves, Jung wrote. But war rarely seeks understanding. It seeks victory. And when the ego is inflated, when the shadow is projected, war becomes inevitable. Across history, war has also served as a rite of passage. For centuries, becoming a warrior was the path to adulthood, especially for men. It was how you proved your worth. In many indigenous cultures, boys were not considered men until they had survived a battle or killed an enemy. The battlefield was not just a place of death, it was a place of rebirth. Even today, many young men and women join the military not just for duty or country, but to find themselves, to test their limits, to be transformed. Modern society has tried to replace this with education, career, and digital achievement. But the yearning remains. We still crave challenge. We still seek identity. And when peaceful outlets fail to satisfy, some turn to violence, not always physical, but emotional, verbal, ideological. Conflict becomes addictive. There's something about war that gives people clarity. In peace, life is complicated. In war, it's simple. There's an enemy, a mission, a clear goal. And for those who feel lost in the chaos of modern life, war offers purpose. This is why some soldiers miss the battlefield. Not the danger or the bloodshed, but the brotherhood, the clarity, the sense that every action mattered. Man is not made for defeat. A man can be destroyed, but not defeated, Ernest Hemingway once said. In war, people feel resilient, alive, transcendent. But this can be a dangerous illusion, because what starts as empowerment can become dependency. We begin to need conflict to feel important, to feel real. And so we start wars in our personal lives, with family, with coworkers, with strangers on the internet. We fight, not always because we're right, but because fighting makes us feel alive. But what if the real war is not out there? What if it's within? Every ancient spiritual tradition speaks of a different kind of war, a battle not between nations, but within the self. In the Hindu text, the Bhagavad Gita, the warrior Arjuna stands on the battlefield, paralyzed by fear. He doesn't want to fight. But the god Krishna tells him, "You were born for this fight. Rise, O warrior, and fulfill your dharma." Krishna wasn't urging violence. He was speaking of inner duty, the battle between fear and purpose, doubt and faith. This inner war is the true battlefield. Christianity also speaks of spiritual warfare. The Apostle Paul wrote about fighting the good fight, not with swords, but with truth, faith, and righteousness. Buddhism teaches that the greatest enemy is not another person, but your own ignorance and attachment. Islam speaks of the greater jihad, the inner struggle for righteousness. This is the highest form of war, not to destroy others, but to destroy illusion, not to conquer lands, but to conquer the self. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate, Jung wrote. The wars we fight outside are often reflections of the wars we've ignored inside. Our anger, our fear, our need for validation, these drive us to conflict. And unless we face them, we will always find a reason to fight. So what do we do with this knowledge? Are we doomed to fight forever? Is war our destiny? Not necessarily. But peace requires more than disarmament. It requires transformation. The only way to end war is to change the hearts of those who wage it. And that starts with us, with each individual willing to confront their shadow, their ego, their inner battlefield. We must stop glorifying war as a path to honor. We must teach our children that true strength is restraint, that courage is found in vulnerability, and that leadership is service, not domination. We must channel the warrior instinct, not into destruction, but into creation. Because we will always have battles to fight. But they don't have to be with guns or bombs. They can be with ignorance, with injustice, with poverty, with despair. These are battles worth fighting, and they require the same discipline, courage, and sacrifice that physical war demands. It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society, said philosopher Jiddu Krishnamurti. And ours is a society that still romanticizes war, that still profits from conflict, that still feeds division. If we want peace, we must become warriors for wisdom, not warriors of war. The first step, awareness. Ask yourself, what war am I fighting? Is it worth it? Is it rooted in truth or in fear? Am I projecting my pain onto others? Am I chasing power when I really seek purpose? You see, the goal is not to eliminate the warrior within you. The warrior is sacred. The goal is to master it, to aim that fire towards something higher, to fight, not for ego, but for evolution. He who conquers himself is the mightiest warrior, Confucius said. That is the ultimate truth. That is the psychology of war. So fight, not with hate, but with love. Not to destroy, but to awaken. Not to dominate, but to serve. Because you were born to fight. But the question is, what are you fighting for?